Okay, so this is share number 3 on Hilchas Chala since the beginning of this man, and today we will be discussing the halacha of Tziruf Sal. Chala is Chal b'shas Gilgul. We have a very choshev guest here, my dear Talmud, the Shai Schechter from America. I'm happy to see you. I didn't know you were planning to come to the Shia this afternoon. We spent time this morning by a Shia, so Baruch Hashem. So the topic we'll discuss today is Tziruf Sal. Chiyuv Chala is b'shas Gilgul Isa. However, L'alocha Kaim Alon, Haroide B'noisen L'tzal, even though b'shas Gilgul, when it was a Isa, there was not a Shia Chala, but Sal Mitzarfon. What is the source that Sal Mitzarfon Chala? We do not find the source in Babli or in Yerushalmi, neither in Psochim Memches, which is the central sugi in Shas Babli, or Yerushalmi Mesechet Chala. We do not find the source. But the Rif, Psochim Memches, Daf Tesvov Medape Rif Mesechet Psochim. The Rif says, Sal Mitzarfon Dersev, V'hoyo Ba'ochlechem, Malachem Ma'oretz. Sosam V'lo Piresh. But it's Mefurish Meferish in the Rif, that is the source. From that posting, V'hoyo Ba'ochlechem, Malachem Ma'oretz, we find that Sal Mitzarfon and the Rambam and Hilchas Bekurim, Perik Vav, Halochet Tezayin, the Rambam says the same. And the Rambam and the Rif are Poiskim, not Parashonim. So the Rambam and the Rif, Satmu Velo Pershu. But many later Rishonim explain. The Posuk says, B'hoyu, b'ochlechem, malachem ha'oretz, you need to be mafresh chala, so it is from here that we know. So sometimes, chiyuv chala would be chal when it's lechem, not when it's dough, not when it's issa. What is the hechetimsa? That as long as it is dough, issa is dough, right? So as long that it's dough, that it's an issa, there still would not be a chiyuv chala. And the chiyuv chala would only become relevant when it's lechem. How is that possible? So it must be in a case in which the show that it was a Issa, there was no shear, and when it becomes pas, when it's lechem, it does have a shear. So how is that possible? If it wasn't one as dough, it cannot become one as pas. So it is from here that we learn Sal Mitzarfon. Kach mavur b'divrei Aran, b'divrei Meiri, b'divrei Rabbeinu David, b'divrei Maram Chalava, many sources in the Rishonim. And lechoira, we do not find any alternative source. How do Chazal know Tziruf Sal? However, there is another source. The Turei Even. Turei Even is not a Rishon, but Turei Even is definitely one of the most important Achronim. Sometimes it occurs to us that he sees himself as a Rishon, because the Shagas Aryeh is quite confident, and he deals with Rashi and Tosfos and the Rif and the Rambam as a contemporary, and in the Shagas Aryeh is constantly bringing Rayas, Memercha v'Yashas, and deciding who's right, Rashi or Tosfos, the Rambam or the Rif or the Rashba. So the Turei Even in Chagigah Daf Chav Gimel, we find the concept of Tziruf Sal not only b'chala but also by Kochim, like Abi Tumas Kochim, Sal Mitzarfon, and even if there is not a Shir Kabeitza, like Abi Tumas Oichlin, but Sal Mitzarfon, so each piece of Kochim doesn't have a Shir or a Kabel Tumah, but Tziruf Sal causes Kabbalas Tumah. So the Turei Even in Chagigah Daf Chav Daled, and that is the basic source in Shas regarding Tziruf Sal by Kochim. The Turei Even wonders, why in Psochim Memches U'Midbeis it's a boya dolei ifshata betavla she'ein lo levaz v'zin, whether there's a din of Tziruf Kli. So it's a boya dolei ifshata. The Rambam paskins of Perik Vav b'Bikurim that it's a suffix, and you need to be mafresh chala b'suffix when loaves of bread or other baked materials that are chayav b'chala, and the Tziruf Sal was not by a kli that has a toich. So the lashon of the Gemara in Psochim Daf Memches is toich kli be'inin or avir kli be'inin. So if you're dealing with a tray that doesn't have any sides, so there is no toich kli because the kli doesn't have a toich, but it still is a kli. So is Tziruf Sal dependent on Avia Kli or on Toich Kli? And in the Gemara Psuchim it's a boyed or yivshete. The Rambam Paskan Sorach Lafresh Musofik. Shin Chofei Sifarav the Shulchan Aruch Paskan's Potor. And the reason the Shulchan Aruch Pat is Potor because Chalav is Manaseh is the Rabbanon. So it's a Sveika the Rabbanon Lekula. At other opportunities we have discussed, and Be'ezus Hashem we still will discuss the question of a Sveika the Rabbanon Sheyesh Lo Ikar Min HaTorah. And this is a classical example of a Sveika the Rabbanon Sheyesh Lo Ikar Min HaTorah. Because Chalav is a mitzvah d'oraisa, Chalav is Manaseh the Rabbanon. And the reason the Mechaber is Mekel, and he says that Tavlo she'ein la levazvez and potum ala hafresh challah is only because challah is manaseh d'Rabbanan, because otherwise the Rambam writes tzorach la hafresh musufik and it's a boyed aliyah shete b'gamora. So this proves that a sveika d'Rabbanan sheyesh lo ikar min HaTorah is still a sveika d'Rabbanan lekula. But anyway, so in Psuchim it's a boyed aliyah shete. By Kochim it's a milsa de pshita that beinan toich kli, and there is no tziruf sal by Kochim if the kli doesn't have walls, if it doesn't have a toich. So the Turei Even wonders, why would there be a difference between Tziruf Sal B'Kochim and Tziruf Sal B'Chala? And in Minchas Osha Masechet Psochim, I don't remember which siman it is, but it is in our Kuntras. Minchas Osha Psochim is siman Peiches. Peiches is Leket HaOros. I think it's the last siman in Minchas Osha Psochim. And it's HaOros Ktsoros on the Masechta. So Ois Yud Aleph, I wonder on the Turei Even, Ma Kesher, what does one didn't have to do with the other? Tziruf Sal B'Kochim we learn from a posek Kaf Achas. Kaf Achas, Chazal Dashen, Akosov Oso, Kol Masha B'Kaf Achas. So that's a Gzos Akosov that we learn from Kaf Achas. Needs to be Dumi the Kaf. And a kaf, which is a spoon, has a toich. That is what defines a kaf. There is no kaf if it's not kamur, if it doesn't have a toich. So if the source of Tziruf Sal B'Kochim is kaf achas, goes without saying, miltzah the pshita, it needs to be dumi the kaf. And therefore, if it's a tabla she'ein lo levazvez, then there is no Tziruf Sal. Tziruf Sal B'Chala is learned from another pasuk. So that is the suffix. But we don't have a clear source by Tziruf Sal B'Chala that we need toich kli. So that's the boy the Gemara. So obviously, it seems to be evident from the kasha of the Turei Even that the Turei Even learned it's the same din. Why would it be different? Shibole haleket siman reishud beis. Tanya Rabosi Siman Mem Hey, they say that we learn Tziruf Sal B'Chala from Tziruf Sal B'Kochim. And obviously that was the pashtus of the Turei Even. It still would be a wonder that the Turei Even Kol Razlei honestly, and what we know about the Shagasari was one of the greatest Bekiyim of all the Achronim. So I don't wonder that he doesn't quote Rabbeinu David or Maram Chalav or the Meiri. These weren't available in the time of the Shagasari, but we would expect the Shagasari to be familiar with the Rif and the Rambam. So according to the Rif and the Rambam, it's a different halacha. Shebole Aleket and Tanya Rabosi say that Tziruf Sal B'Chala we learn from Tziruf Sal B'Kochim. Yesh Loimar, maybe, even if we are aware that it's a different source. But why should they be different? They're both the same concept. So the Shagas Arya Niskasha, why should they be different? Well, they definitely could be different, because if you learn from Kaf, that in itself is a source, that you need Toich Kli. A Kaf has a Toich. If you learn from why would we need a Toich? Still one can argue that if we have two dinim of Tziruf Sal, there is some basic svara. Yelamed hasosum min hamefurish. So, till this moment we spoke about the source. Where do we know Tziruf Sal? We have two Drochim Rishonim. Most of the Rishonim, and the more important of the Rishonim, because Roshei HaMedabrim B'Kol Mokoim, are the Rif and the Rambam. But there are sources in Rishonim, Sheboy Elaket and Tanya Rabasi, that don't have the same weight and the same significance as the Rif and the Rambam, but there is another Mahalach in the Rishonim that we learn, Tziruf Sal B'Chala, from Tziruf Sal B'Kochim. And now I want to make a point and try to explain maybe not only two different sources, but two different halachas in their very essence. Yesh la'ayin begeder tziruf sal. After we know tziruf sal, is it the same as gilgul or as neshicha? Because in the very source of chiyuv chala, there's a machlokes in the Mishnah whether we need neshicha or maybe, as Rabbi Eliezer says, af haroide v'noisen letzal mitzarfon. How do we understand the concept of tziruf sal? Gilgul Issa, it's one dough, one piece of dough. Neshicha teaches us, even though we have two pieces of dough. But if we stick them together, and I think it's the Rash on the Mishnah is quoted by all the later poskim, Neshicha means they're really stuck together and you want to separate them. The separation won't be the same as they were before. But some pieces or particles from this loaf, from this piece of dough, will stick to the other. So Neshicha makes them as one, as if they were one, Mishas Gilgul. Is Tziruf Sal the same? Does Tziruf Sal mean that the separate Lachmaniyot, or the separate chalas, are considered as one, or maybe not? Maybe that is the difference between Tziruf Sal B'Kochim and Tziruf Sal B'Chala. Because the Loshen of Chazal in Chagig Chov Gimel Amud Beis, Tziruf Sal B'Kochim, Kaf Achas, HaKosav Oso Kol Ma Shebekaf Achas. So that's Pashtus Loshen. Kol Ma Shebekaf is Achas. And regarding Tumah, it's very mistaber. Because Tumah needs a shear. And what doesn't have the shear is not Mekabel Tumas Oichlin. So, contrary to the din of Minamukaf, for instance, Batumas Amaisis, Tumah means to be one. So the Lashon of the Gemara B'Tziruf Sal B'Kochim is HaKosav Oso Kol Ma Shebekaf Achas. Regarding Tziruf Sal B'Chala, I think it would be more reasonable to say, no, it's not considered one. It's considered together. The Tashbetz has a Hagdorah. And I use this Hagdorah in my tshuvas from time to time. Recently I wrote a tshuva about Kilei Ilan. And I quoted the Tashbetz. The Tashbetz writes there are two types of Harkova. Harkova Mizgis and Harkova Shchenis. I first came across this Hagdorah, the Shoel HaMeshiv. He likes this Hagdorah and he quotes him from time to time, in many different ways. Do you know what fusion is? Do you know what fusion is? What's the difference between fission and fusion? Okay, so atom bombs are based on fission. The hydrogen bomb is based on fusion. That's about what I know about bombs. Fusion means fusing things together. Atom bombs are about splitting atoms. And when you split uranium atoms, they release energy. Fusion is about fusing atoms together and turning two into one. So, Kaf Achas, HaKosav Osan Achas, is fusion. I think Tziruf Sal B'Chala is not about being one, but Harkova Shchenis, being next to each other, being together, not being one, but being together. Gilgul Issa is one. Neshicha makes them one. Tziruf Sal makes them together, not one. So it is not only two different sources, Tziruf Sal by Kotchim and Tziruf Sal by Chala, maybe it's two different concepts. And that is why by Kotchim we need Toich. Because by Kotchim something different happens. They become as one. And therefore, there's a Shir Lagabatuma. Masha Enkein Tziruf Sal by Chala. Tziruf Sal by Chala is bringing them together. It's a Harkove Shchenes. They're like neighbors in the same house, but they don't become one. And maybe that would also give somewhat more svora regarding the Kasha of the Turi Yevon. Why by Kotchim it's a milsa de pshita that if there is no Toich Kli, there is no Tziruf. And by Chala it's a boya de la yifshita and a sofek. So how do we understand Tziruf Sal by Chala? Which brings us to a big chiddush that we find in Sefer HaChinuch Shin Pei Hey, and the Minchas Chinuch thought that this is a chiddush not found anywhere besides in Sefer HaChinuch. Sefer HaChinuch Shin Pei Hey writes, Tziruf Sal is only b'shas l'diyam in atanar. It is only when you take the loaves out of the tanner, out of the oven, directly into the sal. It is only then that sal is mitzaref. But if you took out the chalas or the bread of the tanner, and each of them didn't have a shir, and at some later stage you put them together into a sal, ein sal mitzaref. And the Minchas Chinuch there in Shin Pei Hey writes that it's a chiddush shalom etzino b'divrei poskim, and the chinuch is a das yochid. He's not a das yochid. This is the shitta that we find in Psochem Memches, Meiri, Rabbeinu David, and as I commented before, I wouldn't wonder why the Minchas Chinuch doesn't bring the Meiri or Rabbeinu David, because they weren't available. But it's also in the Ritva. In Psochim Daf Memches, the Ritva brings the shitta. But what is a taima is that it's in Rashi. In Nidid of Chesed Medalef, Rashi writes that Tziruf Sal is b'shas rodiyah. Actually, the lashon of the Mishnah is af haroide v'noisen lasal. But in the Mishnah we could say it's just a lashon and not a halacha. But this shitta that Tziruf Sal is only b'shas rodiyah, b'shosh moitzim and atanar, is a shitta nechbedes, and it's far from being a shitta yachidoi. First of all, the most important source is Rashi in Masechet Niddah, but it's also in the Ritva, in the Miran, of Rabbeinu David, and in Sefer HaChinuch. So, I do have a kuntras, Ores of Reb Hersh Pesach Frank on the Minchas Chinuch, which I bought as a bocher that was very, very long ago. Oh, must be more than 45, at least 45 years ago. And I brought that Kuntus, Oris of Reb Hersh Pesach Frank on the Minchas Chinuch. And on this Minchas Chinuch, when the Minchas Chinuch wonders that this is a Das Yochid, that Tziruf Sal needs to be B'shor Sheroida Menatana, Reb Hersh Pesach Frank comes up with a spark of genius, which is totally unreasonable. Totally unreasonable. But it is a spark of genius. So the lashon of the Shulchan Aruch in the first Sif in Shin Chof Hey is Yesh Oimrim Shapoiris Mappa is like Tziruf Sal, and Apoiris Mappa Mitzarfon. And the Shach wonders, why does the Shulchan Aruch call this a Yesh Oimrim? Lo Metzinu Choylek. And the Tur brings the shitta, and it's in Maharil. But the Mechaber writes, Yesh mi she'oima she'em achas hapas b'mapa choshev kamoi kli letzarfon. So, Yesh mi she'oima, Shach, Sif Kotten Hey, lo yedati loma kosvei b'shem Yesh mi she'oima, sharei ein cholik b'doro. וגם הטור, נוקת סתומה, היידינו, ומריל בלחס פסח כוסף, דים אלו כלי שמחזקס כולם, ינחנה במפה ויחסה במפה גם כן עליהם ונקרו צירוף, אוגון. So why does the Shulchan Aruch write, Yesh mi she'oima? Argues a Pesach Frank, because mapa is never b'shor sheroidim min hatanur. The lashon of the Shulchan Aruch is, im mechase hapas b'mapa, which means he didn't prepare the mappa and he puts the pas into the mappa, but rather covers. So the chiddush is that a kli could be upside down, and even though it's not in the kli, but if it's covered with a mappa, and the mappa covers the sides of the pas, that is like a kli sheyesh lo toich. So the shach wonders, why is it a yesh misha oimrim? Ein choylek. The best Weiss Frank says, of course there's a choylek, Sefer HaChinuch. Sefer HaChinuch is choylek because he says it needs to come from the Tana into the Kli. So, can't be kisol of b'mapa. That is why it's a yesh misha oimer, because according to the Chinuch, this halach isn't right. Why do I say totally unreasonable? Far more than unreasonable. I think it's harsh enough to say unreasonable, but so if that is the reason the Shulchan Aruch writes Yesh Misha Omer, wouldn't it make sense to also bring Yesh Misha Omer Shetzorach Tziruf Sal right out of the Torah? I mean that is the reason this is a Yesh Misha Omer. So if the reason it's only Yesh Misha Omer because it doesn't fit in with the Sefer HaChinuch, just explain why wouldn't you bring the Sefer HaChinuch? So why wouldn't you bring what?
Even if we do that,
well, at the least, we would expect the Beis Yosef to bring this shit, right? If this din of Shulchan Aruch is based on that shit, so the Beis Yosef doesn't bring that shit. So it would be unreasonable to say Yesh Misha Omer is because of the shitta in Sefer HaChinuch. If that shitta is not brought not only in Shulchan Aruch, but not even in Beis Yosef. So regarding the question of the shach, so why does the Mechaber write Yesh Misha Omer? It is a very, very well-known rule we find many times in the Noisei Kelim. Not in the shach, and that's not noteworthy. But the Smach Mishpot Tezayin Siv Koten Ches, Chavov Siv Koten Yud Gimel, the Mishnah Brura and the Mogen Avraham in Shin Vav, Mishnah Brura Siv Koten Yud Aleph. I remember another source that we find in Hilchas Chanukah regarding Plaga Mincha. When we find a shit in the Rishonim, and it's only brought in one Rishon, or maybe two Rishonim, and it's not consensus, even though Ein Misha Choylek, the Shulchan Aruch writes Yesh Misha Omer. And that is a well-established klal in Shulchan Aruch, and I quoted three sources, but there are many more. I just have to, use my memory. But I did quote three sources: Smach Mishpot Zayin, Chavav, Mishnah Brura Shin Vav, Siv Koten Yud Aleph, and there are many more sources. The Shach did not accept that. So the Shach L'Shitosai wonders, why does the Shulchan Aruch write Yesh Misha Omer if we don't find a choylek? But it's not a pera at all, according to many other Noisei Kelim on the Shulchan Aruch. Because yes, it's in the Tur, it's in the Maharil, but it's not in most Rishonim. It's not in the Rambam, it's not in the Rif, it's not in the Rashba, it's not in Gedolei Poiskei Rishonim, and that is why the Mechaber writes Yesh Misha Omer. But let's get back to Guf HaSavora. So there are quite a few Rishonim that say Tziruf Sal needs to be B'shas Radia Minatan, or not late. So the way I wish to understand this will also explain what many Achronim are navuch in Shittas HaRambam, that Eina Tanur Mitzaref, only Sal. And Tziruf Sal comes to exclude Tanur, Eina Tanur Mitzaref. The Meiri says, if Sal is Mitzaref, Kol Shekein Tanur, but the Rambam clearly says, Ein HaTanur Mitzaref, and I think it's also in the Shulchan Aruch, that Ein HaTanur Mitzaref. Why not? So, as you know, when I saw it in the Shir of the Rosh Kollel, Rav Dershowitz, some Achronim say because it's Mechuber Karka, so it's not a Kli, or it's Yosem, Machzik Yosem Emenso, and it's not a Kli, and then there's room to argue our Tanurim aren't Mechuber Karka, and they're not so big, so maybe the Tana L'Kuli Alma would be Mitzaref. So I think no. And I think the din of Tziruf Sal, as I said before, Sal doesn't cause fusion. It's not one. After all, it's different kikrois lechem, but they're together. And I think the two shlavim of Gilgul and Tziruf Sal are similar in a way to the two different shlavim in Chiyuv Tchumas HaMaisos. One is Kri, Imur, Isuf. When you cut the tfua, you cut the wheat, and you bring them together. That is one shlav of Chiyuv Tchumas HaMaisos, and the other is Riyas Pnei Abayis. So Lagabe Tchumas HaMaisos, anything that the derech is to bring into the house is not chayav at she'yireh pnei habayis. Wheat, tavua is wheat. What is the translation of tavua? Grain. Wheat is chita. Okay, grain. Grain you usually don't bring into the house. It is processed out there in the field. But asiyas kri, which is also defined in Chazal as miruach, that is the stage in which, stage number one, when you bring together the grain. Stage number two regarding Peres and Yerokes is Riyas Pnei Chotzar or Riyas Pnei Habayis. So there are different stages in when is the Chiyuv Tchumas HaMaisos. And to me, Gilgul is similar in a way to Miruach. Tziruf Sal is similar to Riyas Pnei Habayis. Bringing something into the house is bringing them into your house for consumption. And in a way, dealing with Challah, which is in the house, Tziruf Sal is like Riyas Pnei Habayis. Gilgul is the beginning of the process. So according to the Sefer HaChinuch, Tziruf Sal is only out of the oven into the sal, out of the field into the house. That is a shlav of gemar, and Tziruf Sal is bringing them together. And that is why it must be somach l'radiyah. Mi atanur letoch hasal. The reason we put things into the dana is to bake them. That is not isuf. It's not putting them together. It's just the process of baking. And the reason we put many loaves or many doughs into the tanner is just economic. You know, we want to save energy. We want to bake as much as we can. That is not the concept of Tziruf Sal. Tziruf Sal is bringing different loaves together, putting them together. In the Tanner, that's not the objective. That's not what it's about. Tanner is about afiyah. The Tanner is about baking. So why do we put different doughs in the Tanner? Just for economic reasons. The Gemara in Beitza says that it's better for baking, which is very simple. You're saving energy because you need to heat up less space. So if you have a full Tanner, you're saving energy. That is not the concept of Tziruf Sal. Tziruf Sal is bringing them together. And the only reason you put them into one sal is you want them together. And that is why Tanur Einoi Mitzaref. And it doesn't depend how big the Tanur is. It doesn't depend whether it's Mechubel Karka. It does not depend on anything. It's a Tanur. It's the place where you bake the bread, not where you store the bread and bring them together. And to me, it's also milsa the pshita that in a fridge or in a freezer there is no tziruf sal, because the reason you put them together is just to have them cold or to have them freezed. That is not tziruf sal. Tziruf sal is when you bring them together for the sole reason of bringing them together and having them together, and that is tziruf sal. So just like a tana wouldn't be mitzaref because tana is only about the heat. A fridge wouldn't be mitzaref because a fridge is about the cold. And tziruf sal is ichsun, and only ichsun. Just bringing them together for the sake of bringing them together, and that is the concept of Tziruf Sal, and that is why Tana Re'im Tzaref. And that is the Shittas HaChinuch, that it is only at the first stage. Another approach would be, Tziruf Sal needs to be when they first get a Teres Lechem. Just like Gilgul is when you make a dough. Tziruf Sal is when you make bread. So why wouldn't the Tanner be? No, because as long as they're in the Tanner, they're unfinished. That's not bread. Well, if it's Kormu Praneo, then it's bread. Regarding Challah, no. Radiyas Apas in Shabbos is a Shavuos. Why would it be a Shavuos? Because I think that Radiyah is defined as Gemar Ha'afiyah, and that is why it's a Maloch. It's a Malocha Darabona, not a Malocha D'Oraisa. But the reason it's a Shavuos is because, like all the Malochas, it's another stage. It's another stage from raw material till your table and your food. Radiyas Apras would be Gemar Ha'afiyah. As long as the lechem is in the Tana, in the hot Tana, then that's not Gemara. Gemara Ha'afiyah is Radiyah, and that is why Radiyas Apras is a Malocha D'Rabbanan, a Shavuos D'Rabbanan. And that is why Tziruf Sal is only when it comes out of the Tana. Lahalocha, Tziruf Sal Mahani Gam Acharakach. Tziruf Sal, whenever it is, Tziruf Sal Moyil. But that is the way I understand the shit of Kama V'Kama Rishonim, that Tziruf Sal needs to be coming out of the Tana. And that would be my understanding why the Rambam and the Shulchan Aruch paskin. Tana Re'ino Mitzaref, Elo Sal.
And that would be even after it cools off, the time it finishes and cools off.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. Because it is the stage of, the stage was the Samach L'Achila. You pack them all together just for the sake of having them together.
Put them back in to warm them up immediately before the Suda. You want to have one bread, so you put all the wood.
So what would be the question? Whether that would be Mitzaref?
Right.
I don't think so. Misha Omru Chachomim she'eina Tana Mitzaref, eina Tana Mitzaref. And after all, when you're heating them, once again, the reason they're in the Tana is for heating. It's not where they're supposed to be.
They have freezers that they sell like ice creams in these big, it's like a big tub. So someone put a lot of challah inside there, I assume. Because it's for a freezer, that would be mafkia, the business out.
Many times in halacha I have difficulty going into details. I don't know. You know, if it actually
It's a sal.
look like a sal, it's like a kli that has a toich. I don't know. If I'll be confronted with a shayla halacha l'maisa as this, I probably would say be mafresh with our bro. You know, that's always the easy way out.
What would be the difference between that and the regular kli type? Because there's no more.
Because it actually is a kli. I think the trays in a fridge are part of the fridge. They're not defined as a kli. It's just a matter of convenience, you know, having little things not fall out, but it's not a kli l'shem kli. Now, if this would be an ice box, it's also not l'shem kli. But it's still, I think it would be more similar to the standard kli. As I said before, I probably would say, be mafresh without a bracha. And then you could wrap it up and throw it away. You don't need to burn it by Seif's Chalitz.
Incidental to your style, like someone made an accident with their shalach manas in the trunk of the car, so that's where the tziruf took place. In the trunk, there was the shear was all in the trunk together. They closed the trunk, and there was a shear in the trunk.
And you ask whether the trunk would be Tziruf Sal?
Correct. It's not for heat. It's not for cold.
No, I don't think so. I don't think so, but I would be interested to see what others say about these shilas. I don't think so. I think at the end of the day, it needs to be similar to what people would define as a sal or as a kli yichsum. A trunk is not the place where you keep food. It's the place where you transfer from one place to the other. It wouldn't be defined as a sal or as a kli. So we discussed various halachas. In the broad sugya of Tziruf Sal, and I was asked to say some short divrei chizuk as we approach Yom Kabbalah Satorah. So Shavuos is called Chag HaAtzeres, and one of the reasons is because Shavuos doesn't really have any specific mitzvahs. Unlike the other two regalim, Pesach has so many mitzvahs, more than any other Yom Tov. Matzah, Moror, Dalet Koises, Sepiyatzias, Mitzrayim, our mitzvahs asay, and we have a Lavin, Lo Yerov, Lo Yamotze, Sarachiles, Anoah, Shel Chometz. Sukkot, we have Sukkah and Dalet Minim. Shavuos is only Kedushas Yom Tov and Kiddush V'Avodah. So in Shavuos, the Minhagim have so much chashivas because we don't have mitzvahs. And Shavuos, primarily two minhagim. One is Leil Shavuos. We're up all night and dedicate this night to Talmud Torah. And that has so much appeal. When, if not Yom Kabbalah Satorah? The other minhag is lynches. Doesn't this seem strange? Cheesecake. Yom Kabbalah Satorah? And that's so important to us. Cheesecake. Why of all days in the year? Chag HaShavuos. The Choik Yankov brings Devash L'Cholov Tachas L'Shoinei. So I think the basic idea is Psachim Samach Esem et Beis, there's a Machlokes of Eliezer and Rabbi Yeshua regarding every Yom Tov. There's a stira between two psukim, Atzeres Tia Lachem, Atzeres Tia Lashem. Rabbi Eliezer says you could choose. Every individual could choose. If you want, dedicate the entire day to Torah and Avodah, Lashem. If you wish, if you prefer, Lachem. Rabbi Yeshua says Chalkei. No. It's not everybody on his own. Chalkei Chetzio Lashem, Chetzio Lachem. And then the Gemara says, Hakal Moedim Ba'atzeres, the Be'irim Beinam Elochem. Shavuos is an exception. Other Yom Tovim you could choose to dedicate the entire day to learn Torah. Not Shavuos. Shavuos, you need to eat and drink. Shavuos needs to be Simchas Aguf. Why? Because of Rashi. Hakal Moedim Ba'atzeres, the Be'ina Beinam Elochem. Laharis Shenoyach U'Makubel Olav Yom Zeh Shebo Nitne Torah B'Sinai. And the expression Shenoyach U'Makubel Olav is cheesecake. So the Gemara doesn't talk about cheesecake, but the Gemara does say Lochem, more than any other Yom Tov. Laharos, to show. To show to whom? Probably to ourselves, but maybe even more important to our children. To prove and show to our children that a Ben Torah is not only a Ben Olam Haba, he is the ultimate Ben Olam Hazeh. And Torah is not about the life of poverty and suffering and stress, hoping we will have all the riches in the world. No. First, and that is why Batzeres, more than any other Yom Tov, we stress Lochem. And I very strongly feel, especially in our day and age, how important this is to the chinuch of our children. So many years ago, and I told this many times, once in my shul, I turned around in the middle of davening and I see a choshev, a young man, big lamb and a tzaddik, davening, and his little 8 or 9-year-old boy standing next to him, and every few minutes he looks at his son and gives him a patch. I was so disturbed after davening, I called him over and he said, if your son will ever feel a time in davening, it's going to be a nezgoli, that's going to be a miracle, because in his very tender mind and feelings, you're making him associate shul with the most unpleasant experience. And how important it is that our children should associate Torah and avodah with simcha. Because children yearn for happiness. Every human being, by his very nature, yearns for happiness. Their pursuit of happiness. So it is so important that our children associate Torah and mitzvahs with simcha. So dafka b'atzeres, yoyim shaboy nitne Torah, you don't have the privilege of kulei la Hashem. No, in this day, hakol moide b'atzeres lebeina beinam elochem laharos, to show, yes, to show that this is a wonderful day, and it's a day in which we are so happy. Because it is a day in which we were zoiche, not only to Olam Haba, it is a day in which we were zoiche to Olam Hazeh, and to the Torah life and the Torah way, which is the greatest simcha. The greatest simcha, not only hoping for Olam Haba, but the simcha b'Olam Hazeh. A life of simcha Torah and simcha mitzvah and edelkeit and mitzvahs midas tovos, and the most beautiful family relationships. So how important it is that our children should associate Yiddishkeit with simcha and with happiness and with nachas. So we all remember that Gemara in the Dorm Daf Pei Aleph, Amu of the Haaretz, Dov ze nishal hachachamim leneviim lemalachi hashoras velo pirshuho. Anshe Kodesh Baruch Hu himself said, Alazu Masterosi Shalei Baruch Hu b'Torah Tchila. They didn't say Berachas HaTorah. Didn't say Berachas HaTorah. So what? The Degel Machne Ephraim Pashas B'Shalach brings an amazing word that he heard from his great Zayda and Rebbe. Who was the Degel Machne Ephraim's Rebbe? Who knows? What? Yeah, most of the time when I ask in a literature course, who was the Degel Machne Ephraim? Everybody says, yeah, the Ephraim Zalman Margol is the base Ephraim. No. Yeah. So I see, besides myself, one chassid sitting here. So the Degel Machne Ephraim. Oh, another one there. In a way. So, the Degel Machne Ephraim was a Talmud and an Einikel of the Baal Shem Tov. And he writes, I heard from my great Zayda, Shalei Baruch Hu b'Torah Tchila, Shaloi Omru v'HaRav no. V'zepele. That's what the Degel writes. Zepele. And it is l'choyre. Because v'HaRav no is the lesser of the three brachas. The Gemara says in Brachas Yud Aleph, the most important bracha in Berachas HaTorah, Mu'ule shebebrachas, is Asher Baruch Baruch. First bracha is also a proper bracha, it's Berachas HaMitzvah. V'HaRav no is a brachas Mucha Lechavetov. So why did the Baal Shem Tov say that tragedy struck us because we didn't say V'HaRav? This brings us to a bigger kasha, which the Bach and the Taz and all the poskim deal with. The Dorah Pei Aleph, what brought about Chorm Abayis? They didn't say Berachas HaTorah, but in Yom Daftes state, Gimel Avedas Chamura Shebetorah. They were murderers and idol worshippers. So it's not about Berachas HaTorah. Question number 3. Why? Were they so detached and so distracted? Why? So my understanding, my pshat would be this. What brought about Chorb Mabayis was Shvichas Domim, Gerei Arais, and Shvichas Domim. But the big question was, how could this be? How could this be? How could a Jew murder his brethren? How could he be a Ratzeach? How did this tragedy befall us? How could a Yid, Shomdu Ragla Bahar Sinai, how could it be a Noibid Avodah Zarah or a Megali Eloyes? How could this possibly be? And the answer was, Shalei Baruch Hu b'Torah Tchila. there was no love of Torah. And when there is no love of Torah, then nothing is left, and there is no safeguard, and nothing is guaranteed. The only way to guarantee that our children will follow in our footsteps is only in having them partake and appreciate in the love of Torah. So the question was not, what Aveda brought about Chorma Bayis? It was obvious. It's in Yomed Aftes, Gimel Avedas Chamur Shebetorah. Bitul Mitzvah Sasei doesn't bring Chorma Bayis. Berachas HaTorah is a Mitzvah Sasei. Bitul Mitzvah Sasei, the Gemara says, Einoi Zaz Misham Ad Shenimchaloi. He doesn't even need a korban. The oil is Machaper and all the Mitzvahs Sasei. That doesn't bring Chorma Bayis. The question was, and nobody knew the answer till HaKadosh Baruch Hu said it. How could a Jew be a Rotzeach or an Oived Avodah Zarah? And the answer was, if there is no love of Torah, then we're in a free fall. So, the most important thing we could give our children is the love of Torah. And that was the amkis of the Baal Shem Tov when he said, what do they mean, Shalei Baruch Hu B'Torah Tchila? They didn't say HaRav. They were lacking the love of Torah. So, Chazal say Shalei Baruch Hu B'Torah Tchila. What is the Dovish in Tchila? They didn't say Berachas HaTorah. What do they mean Tchila? Some Rishonim ask, it's in the Or Zerua, we only have two brachas that are Min Torah, none more. Berachas HaTorah and Berachas HaMazon. So why are they different? We would expect the only two brachas to be the same. Why do we say Berachas HaMazon after we eat and Berachas HaTorah before we learn? Why wouldn't they be the same? So I say, Berachas HaTorah is an anoas haguf. Dai lo la'odem sheyavorach la'achar shemilei kreis. Kodesh Baruch Hu doesn't want you to be so happy that you're going to eat. No, it's enough. You're no longer hungry. This is the time to give thanks to Kodesh Baruch Hu. By Torah, you have to be happy when you see the yeshiva from afar, when you see the kollel. You have to be happy that you have the privilege that you're going to learn. And that is why Berachas HaTorah comes before learning and not after learning. Al milui hakeres, dai lo la'odam sheyavorach la'achar shemilei kreisoi. So maybe to them, maybe they did say Berachas HaTorah, but after they finished, to them it was like Berachas HaMazon. They lacked the love of HaRav nu Hashem Elokeinu was divrei terascho b'finu. And that is how tragedy befell us. So in this very special bracha, we ask v'harevna, and then we ask another bakosha. V'ni anachnu v'tzetzuenu. It is uncommon, two different bakoshas in one bracha. And I say, they're not two different bakoshas. They're intertwined, two sides of the same coin. It is only if we will feel Mesikas HaTorah, and we will share with our children Mesikas HaTorah, that we have a fair chance. ונהיה אנחנו וצאצואינו וצאצואי צאצואינו וצאצואי עמך בישראל כולנו ליודעי שמך ולמדס וסך ולשמו. Yes. So that is why Shavuos is about blinches. It's about simcha. It's about happiness. It's about sharing with our children the ultimate happiness of being B'nai Torah and of learning Torah and of being close to a Kodesh Baruch. So our minig is to eat machole chola v'devash in the morning. So I say, yeah, you deserve cheesecake, but only after you sit a whole night and learn. You got to earn it. So after you sit a whole night and learn, without speaking one word of Devorim B'Teilim, and dedicate this magnificent night LaOmer HaTorah, LeYagias HaTorah, and to Simchas HaTorah, B'dinu sheyit al tzcharoi, comes morning, blinches and cheesecake. Laharois, shenoyach v'mekubal olav yoyim zeh shabon b'Torah Sinai. So we should have the schia, to learn a lot of Torah and to be mishtasheh b'divrei Torah and share with our children simchas Torah. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu Yazeinu L'man Kavod Shemoi. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu should send us Moshiach Tzidkenu B'meiru V'yameinu Amen. A good Yom Tov.